right, everybody, welcome to Bourbon and Breakthroughs. Today I'm with my friend Johanna White, who is going to blow your mind about branding and with an incredible personal story, breakthroughs peppered throughout her story and in her business. And today we are going to open up some rabbit hole, right? Made right here in Louisville, Kentucky. Today we're having the Heigold expression, which is their high rye straight bourbon whiskey. I'm so excited for you to be here, Johanna. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And, you know, you bring so much energy to every conversation. I feel like everybody listening is going to be like, okay, I need to go look her up and see what she's all about, because she loves what she does and it just oozes out of you. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I can honestly say this is probably going to be one of the most fun, different podcast episodes I have ever been on. So I'm equally excited.
Perfect.
Plus, you're just epic. So
Oh, well, thank you.
Be here with you.
That's just because I get everybody drunk on the show. That's well, you know, we could sit here and go back and forth about your story, you know, try to put some context to you. If it's okay, I would like to just read your bio for everybody, because it summarizes what you're up to so concisely. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Go for it.
Awesome. So if you don't already follow Johanna on social media, you probably know, or you probably don't know, Designs by Joe. That's her brand. She's an award-winning graphic designer and visual branding strategist who designs premium brand identities. And this is one of the reasons that I wanted her to come on the show, because she's out in the market asking six figures for her work. And not very many people I know are confident enough to do that. So we're going to dig into, how did she get to a point where she trusts the value of what she offers, and she knows how to target the right buyer for that product and that service at that price range. So as the founder of Design by Joe Studio, she believes that if someone is the best at what they do, they deserve to look like it. And if you scroll through her website, you're going to see some examples of the brands she's worked with, like Whirlpool and United Way. And you'll see exactly what we're talking about, that she makes these people look like they are the best at what they do. It's a lot of fun to peruse your work there, Johanna.
Thank you.
For the past decade, she's worked with everyone from individuals to Fortune 200 brands to help them magnetize their dream opportunities, clients, and investors, and be delightfully expensive as they deserve to be. And I'm going to qualify that just as a coach. I'm like, you know, we hear the word expensive and some people get turned off, some people get turned on. And it's really just a screen for your ideal client, your price. So expensive, I just had this conversation yesterday. I know I'm getting off on a tangent. I'm trying to read your bio. I'm getting off on a tangent, but this is relevant. I was just talking with somebody yesterday about the housing market changing and how a lot of realtors are slowing their businesses down or cutting expenses. And he asked me, he said, you know, is this affecting your business? Because you coach some realtors and you coach business owners. Are you seeing people pull back? And I said, well, it depends on who we're talking about, because the people that I coach are people who want to invest in coaching, right? Mm-hmm. So regardless of what the price tag is, there is a buyer in that range who is excited to invest at that level. And there's also, you know, just as many people saying, that's too expensive for me, or as many people saying, I would never buy that in a million years. Is that how you see it?
I absolutely. Pricing is very subjective, and we will get into that more later. Happily, I love that topic. But the word expensive means something different to everyone. And for me, it is a way to qualify and meet the types of clients that I want to serve at the level they're at. Like, for example, there are people who are completely comfortable shopping for jewelry at Target. That's where they're happiest. They think they're getting the best value. Like, that's how they want to live their life. There are people who are completely comfortable shopping for jewelry at Cartier. Mm-hmm. And they would not shop for less. You know, to them, if it costs less, it wouldn't be the quality, the prestige, even the kind of emotional like thrill of buying it. And for the people who shop at Target for their jewelry, like, they would feel sick to their stomach if they maybe went to Cartier and bought something. Neither one of those is a wrong price point. They're just different. And there are people for every price point.
Yeah, I like that you said that neither one is wrong, right? I saw a coach working on building a premium brand. He charges $100,000 per client per year, and you only talk every other week, I think. So this is, at the top of the market for coaching. At least some, and look, we can go all day with this because I just said that. And I was like, actually, no,
It's
that's not
not
true. Yeah, that's
actually.
not true because I know Tony Robbins charges $1 million plus 20% of whatever business you're coaching in. So it's like, actually, there's probably
It's
somebody
not
out
even
there,
close.
yeah, who does twice that. So look, it's all relative, folks. That's what we're trying to say here. Um, you know, well, yes, we're going to revisit that here in a little bit. I do want to get into your bourbon in just a second, but I want everybody to know that part of the reason that I wanted you to come on and talk about your breakthroughs is not just the business success that you've had, but the personal breakthroughs that you've overcome and moved through. Your bio says here that there's no limit on success, and you proved it several years ago when you took life by the horns and started 3 companies within 1 year. That would be enough while battling a brain tumor. And at a time when everybody else in her life was suggesting that she quit working and go on Social Security to cover the medical bills, she chose to do the opposite and defy all the odds. Now you can see, especially just go to the website. Do you mind to tell them what the website address is exactly?
Designbyjoestudio.com. And Joe is just J-O because I'm a girl, if you hadn't noticed.
And for everybody listening, we'll put a link in the show notes. I just want you to scroll through some of the visuals here to go along with the story. So let me just do this. Can we go on and get into your bourbon and get into your story?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely. I would love that so much. How do you want to start? I brought all the options.
Please
I brought
show everybody what's going on here because she is the most prepared guest we've had yet.
I'm usually a tequila girl, but I do love a good whiskey, so I came prepared. So I brought my Superman shot glass, which is how my husband and I celebrate wins, with a nice expensive shot of tequila that we just sip, but it's always got to be Superman. I came prepared for On the Rocks, and then I also pre-muddled for an old fashioned, and
Brilliant.
probably my cocktail of choice. So I am ready on all fronts. You just tell me how you want to start.
Well, I'm going to let you choose because it's really up to you. What I do want to do is take a minute to feature our bourbon that we're drinking today. I said this earlier. It's from our friends at Rabbit Hole. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kave. This is made right down the road from our house here in Louisville, Kentucky. It is phenomenal stuff. This is their high rye expression. It's 95 proof. So if you're into the lighter stuff, maybe not reach for this one the first time, but I like this because it stands up in a cocktail. So you just saw the 3 different ways that you might enjoy this today. And each one is a completely different experience with this particular bourbon. It's a high rye double malt bourbon. So again, if you haven't tried this one, it's definitely worth experimenting with. One of my favorite ways to drink this is just with an ice cube out by a campfire. It has this incredible charred, smoky, obviously oaky flavor, but it's just got enough kick and enough body to stand up when you're outside and you want something that kind of means it. So one of the things that I also want to highlight is that when you taste this, see if you can pick up the notes of butterscotch, citrus, different types of citrus fruits in there, and that pepper spice from the rye, the amount of rye that's in there. I always forget the percentages. It is 70% corn, 25% malted rye, and 5% malted barley. That's why they say it's double malted. You've got 2 different types in there. Okay, you ready to do this?
Yes. And my vote is we start neat so I can taste all of it. I'm glad you gave me the cheat sheet of flavors there because one thing I'm terrible at is naming like smells and notes.
Brilliant. Well, you know what? We try to help everybody out because not everybody lives in bourbon country.
Thank you.
And not everybody has been through the incredible distillery experience at Rabbit Hole a few times.
And you're going to take me through it. I'm going to also, if you don't mind, go ahead and like pour in the other 2 glasses because there's nothing quite like a flight to be able to quickly test.
We support as many styles of tasting this as you want. For everybody listening, look, even if you're not into, the subtleties of the notes that are in the bourbon, etc., my encouragement is just go out and experiment with different, not only distilleries, but also different expressions. Some are aged in other types of barrels. Some are aged for an incredibly long time. This one is, I think, 4 years old. Hey, what's up? This is Chris Goodman, and we'll be back to your episode in about 45 seconds. Listen, if you're ready to take your life and your business up to your next level of success, freedom, fulfillment, fun, all of it, you need the help of a top coach. All the best in the world at anything have a great coach in their corner. They can help you identify your goals, develop a plan to achieve them, give you accountability, give you support, give you guidance all along your way up to the top. Now, look, most coaches are created equally, we'll say. They don't perform equally, however. So if you want to get the most out of your coaching, you need to work with somebody who has a proven track record of success. And that's where I come in. I have over 15,000 hours of coaching people just like you. And after coaching countless entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives, influencers, real estate agents, you name it, I've probably coached them. I can do the same for you. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and contact me. Go to goodmancoachinginc.com. That's goodmancoachinginc.com. Fill out the quick application, and let's talk about coaching you to your goals. Now let's get back to the episode. 3 years. There we go.
I just saw the 95 proof part.
Yeah. So I gave my coach.
This podcast could get real fast.
Yeah, my coach, Dr. Keith Wagner, came on, and he doesn't drink too often. And so I didn't warn him about the high proof on what I had him pour. And you could see him kind of like, whoo, that one hit him. All right. So the way that we want to introduce this, especially if you're playing along at home and you don't drink bourbon very often, we can do what's called a Kentucky Chew. And in the Kentucky Chew, it's just a couple of drops, maybe 1 or 2 drops on your tongue, and you kind of move it around like you're chewing something that isn't even there. But by rolling the whiskey around your palate, you're basically telling your mouth, your body, your whole palate, hey, this isn't gasoline that I've put in you. It's okay. You don't need to react. You don't need to freak out. And it's also going to help warm up your tongue to the different notes that are on there. So when you go back for the second drink, you won't have that recoil. You won't have that reaction to the 95 proof. The fact that almost half of what you're drinking is alcohol.
Okay. And are you starting neat or on the rocks with it?
I started neat because
okay.
I'm like you. I want to taste all
flavor.
Of it. So, well, cheers, Johanna.
Cheers.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. If you've never done a Kentucky, even if you've drank your whole life, I recommend giving that a shot, that Kentucky Chew, because it's a totally different experience when you go back in for that second bite.
All right, let's see here. Is it that form if I go?
No, I would expect it.
My throat.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Hold that in.
So, part of the fun of this show is I'm handpicking the expressions for everybody. One of the reasons that I wanted to pick something that was bold here is that's how I've encountered you so far. You have a lot of power, a lot of energy behind you. You're a little bit spicy, right? There's a lot of like little winks at things in your brand, in your branding. And, there's also this fight in you. We, briefly talked about your story, but we're going to get into that. But there's a lot there. So the expression kind of matches your story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that nod and appreciate your thoughtfulness.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Let's talk about you for a while. I'm going to shut up and get out of the way. Can you take us through? Actually, I'm sorry. I did go too fast. I got excited. What do you think about it? Because you just tried it for the first time. What do you think about it?
So I love how much flavor it has.
Okay.
I love how much spice it has. I do taste that.
Mm-hmm.
And the citrus. If I was looking for something to just sip, which is kind of my favorite, I vary between let's just sip it plain and let's do old fashions.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I would look for something more smooth to just sip, but I'm really excited to see what this tastes like in my old fashioned, because my husband had some like whistle pig the other night. I made an old fashioned out of it and there was no spice at all. It was awful. It was boring, a boring old fashioned.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I like that you sent me something strong enough to stand up in a cocktail.
Yeah. I think, play with it in a few different ways. my opinion is an old fashioned is the best cocktail with this particular, this expression from Rabbit Hole. But again, if you're listening and you're like me, like sometimes I just want something that's big and bold. There's a great episode of Mad Men where he walks into a party and they say, "Can I get you something to drink?" And he goes, "Something big and brown." And sometimes, like, especially, we do a lot of campfires here in my house. It's just perfect for that. Well, let's get into your story for everybody who's been like teased along here. They're like, tell us about what happened. These 3 businesses, 3 companies in 1 year while battling a brain tumor. What happened and how did you break through all of that?
Let me breathe down the whiskey for a second here. Take a sip of water, and then I'll have enough throat to answer that.
Yeah.
Feel free to edit that out if you don't want your guests to appear weak.
No, we do light editing. I want everybody in their full form on this show.
Okay.
That's
Literally, it knocked it out. I'm going to try the old fashioned. We'll see if that calms it down. Okay, that's good.
when I taste it, I get loads of vanilla. The bursts of the citrus on the back end, like it's almost like I'm breathing out like a little bit of citrus, and the loads of oak. Like it says butterscotch on my tasting notes. I can see that. Yeah, I can see. It's more of a feeling. Like if somebody was talking to me that had a butterscotch in their mouth, like a Werther's, that's sort of what I pick up. But yeah, loads of vanilla and oak for me. Yeah.
On someone else's breath.
Yeah. My drink tastes like someone else's breath. That's what I just said on a show. Yeah. Okay. Again, I'm going to shut up, get out of the way. Take us through what happened, with these 3 businesses and building these all while battling a brain tumor and breaking through all of that.
Well, it's a long and convoluted story that I will do my very best to shorten and make concise and make sense. But if any of it gets left out or I leave cliffhangers, which I am prone to do in this story, I'm happy to provide some resources at the end where people can hear anything that we forgot to talk about. But the main part that you are asking about is back in October of 2013, I went from being ultra healthy, fit, and strong, as far as me and everyone else knew, to overnight waking up in the middle of the night with a migraine, which then when it faded, I was left with partial paralysis down my left side, collapsed vocal cords, messed up soft palate, food was coming out of my nose instead of going down my throat. And I couldn't breathe very well and I couldn't talk, I had no voice. And took a while, first emergency rooms, then some surgeons, then some MRIs, and then eventually ended up actually at an ENT who put 2 and 2 together and said, all of these functions, it's super weird that this is happening. They're all controlled though by your 9th and 10th cranial nerves. And so I'm going to send you to a neurosurgeon and we're going to see if they find something. And they found a brain tumor, which was completely unexpected because as far as I knew, one day I'm perfectly healthy and the next day my body doesn't work right. And it's not like I got hit by a car or fell off a horse. I've done that a lot of times, but this time I didn't. There was no excuse. It was just one day life was good and the next day it was crumbling. And at least health-wise. And so that was a very sudden upset to what had previously been a very safe and certain life. And up till that point, which I was 25 when that happened, up till that point, I had played life very safe, very small, flew under the radar. I was so afraid of haters or of being wrong about something that I never put myself out there. And I went to college, I got a graphic design degree. I got a job in my field, right? Like during college. And I use that very loosely because it was kind of bottom of the totem pole design work at a small agency. I think I was just mostly doing page layouts and proofing ads for errors before they went to press, like so glam.
Mm.
And
Yeah, for
but
everybody who's not watching the video, she was using air quotes a lot there. You couldn't you couldn't see those.
I'll keep my air quotes in my pocket now. But it wasn't that any of that would have been bad if it was tapping into my potential, or if it was actually doing work that I cared about, or if I was actually serving people in a way that I felt mattered to their life and their business, or if I was at least surrounded by people that we were going somewhere together and we were on a journey and I was supported. But none of that was the case. It was a very dark, dark time. It was very negative people that also worked there. It was the kind of people that you might think about spreading your wings, and they would say something like, no, you're just lucky to have a job. The design market is flooded. You're just lucky to be working in your degree. Anything that anyone
Wow.
has ever said about why you shouldn't try for something.
Wow.
And at that time, with my whole like, well, it's safe to be mediocre feeling, I listened to it, I stayed in it, and I might have stayed in it a whole lot longer. So I had been at that company about 3 years. Like, I worked my way through college, kind of paid my way through as I went. And I might have stayed longer if this had not happened. So I am actually very grateful that it did. As hard as it was and as terrifying as it was the catalyst and the kick in the pants for me to look around at my life and say, I'm not going out like this. If life is suddenly uncertain when I thought I knew everything, I am going to do everything I can with the time I have left to know that I did not leave anything on the table, that I lived up to my potential, that I helped people, that I made a difference in the world. Or if I can't do that, then I need to be spending this time with my family, with my friends, riding my horse, riding my motorcycle, like just living life, feeling alive in the time that I have left. And when they found the tumor, it felt like every other week, the answer I was getting was the results are inconclusive. They didn't know the type of tumor. Apparently they're kind of like snowflakes. And
Really?
you think that when you get diagnosed with brain tumor, it's going to be like an episode of House where the surgeon doesn't sleep until he figures out how to solve it. And then everybody comes together and they're all your biggest advocates. And then, you get surgery, they rush you in, all of these things.
Yeah, they take the
Especially
cat out of the house and it heals itself and like
yes,
miraculously. Yeah.
exactly. Especially when they keep telling you, we don't know if you're going to die. We don't know this. We don't know that. We don't know how much time you have left. Like all of these things. You think, well, this seems urgent. But the real world doesn't always work that way. Medical stuff takes time. And so it just set me on a journey of going from surgeon to surgeon to surgeon. And they would say, I think I can help you. I'm going to, I'll get back to you in a week. And then they'd get back with me and they'd say, actually, I don't have the right equipment, or I don't have the right technique, or I don't have the right team, or I don't have the right something, but such and such a guy, maybe they can help you. And that surgeon would have a wait list for 6 months. So you get put on the list.
So real quick, this all started in October 2013, right?
2013.
How
Yeah.
long before you got to somebody who said, I can and will help you?
Well, funny story about that. It was about 2.5 years.
Wow, really?
And this is where the story gets convoluted. I'm going to wind back to the good parts that were
Okay.
happening under the surface. But it was about 2.5 years. And what actually happened was I finally ended up with a surgeon who said, actually, this is not that big a deal for me. I deal with that area all the time. I'll just remove the eardrum, go in through the skull. We'll take it out, which sounds scary, but don't worry. Minimal risks, maybe some nerve damage in your jaw. And so I said, sign me up, because at this point, I'm just so ready for certainty in my life again.
Yeah.
I'm ready to stop thinking about this. I'm ready to be done. And so signed up for that surgery, which was 3 months from the date that he met with me. And when we went to this surgery. It's like 5 a.m. They're going to start you because it's a 10-hour thing. We've been up all night because there's no way you can sleep before brain surgery.
Right.
My whole family has traveled to Indianapolis, which is where the neuro clinic was, and friends have come and they all got hotel rooms and they're going to stay and like be there when I wake up and all this stuff. So I've been fasting for 24 hours and all the normal surgery prep. So I am sleepy and I'm hangry. And
Great combination for any woman out there. Yeah.
yeah. And they get me in, the nurses get me all set up, needles in, like IVs, the anesthetic. Wow. Half a shot, man. And you want to say it for me?
I need to send
The
sandwiches with the bottles.
anesthesia guy.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
The anesthesiologist. And I apologize to all of them out there that
at the end of the show, I'm going to ask her to say British Constitution, and we're going to see how many takes it requires for her to say it properly.
Wow. The anesthesiologist is there, ready to put me under. And the surgeon comes walking in with my charts and he says, you know what? I looked at these again and I'm actually not going to do this surgery. It's way too risky. It would actually potentially put you in a feeding tube for life or in a wheelchair for life. And I'm not going to do that to your body. So unless the symptoms do that to you, I can't help. So that is how long it took to get to a surgeon, but then still no, like
2.5 years later, still no clarity. And then having, oh, wow. So what happened next?
So what happened next is I said, well, I'm done then with doctors, with surgery, and with MRIs that scare the pants off of me every 6 months. And I'm going to do what I should have done the whole time, which is stand in faith and belief and just lean into God and say, okay, I guess the way you want to heal this is not through the doctors, because trust me, I've tried that and it hasn't worked. So we're going to go a different route. We're going to go back to just standing on faith and start actively ignoring all evidence to the contrary, which served me greatly later in business life.
Sure.
But we can circle back to that one too. But the good news is that when that happened, I was 2.5 years in, I was already almost completely healed. All of my symptoms were gone by that point. And I was getting better and better because I don't know which way to go. The reason I still wanted the surgery, even though I knew I was healed, was again, the MRIs didn't prove that I was healed and I wanted to be certain. Mm-hmm. So I kept following through. But in reality, what had been happening under the current along the surface the whole time was that the miracle had already been working. Mm-hmm. And that started the day I got diagnosed. And the day I found out about the tumor, I had a really amazing friend of my dad's and mine who showed up on my porch before I could tell anybody about this diagnosis. And he had a brand new little iPad mini loaded with the Olive Tree Bible app and all these verses about healing. And he gave it to me and he said, this is for you. This is tools for the battle and we're going to fight. And
how did but you hadn't told anybody yet.
My dad had talked to him.
Oh, now I understand.
Really close. Okay. So
yeah, I thought this guy,
the next level, he just knew.
Yeah.
Well, Doc is pretty crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if he already knew and was just waiting for Dad to call. But everyone needs someone like this in their life. He was very strong in his faith, very just kind of black and white Christian, and he wasn't afraid to say what needed to be said, even if he knew I didn't want to hear it. Mm. And when he was talking to me, he basically said, Johanna, this is your chance to actually do something about what you believe. You've been talking your whole life about how you believe in God, you believe in healing, you believe in miracles. This is your chance to actually act like it. And man, did I want to punch him.
Yeah, right. What a bold thing to say to somebody who's just been diagnosed with a brain tumor. I mean, yeah. So tell me what was going through your mind when he said that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I I like remember where we were standing because that is imprinted in my soul forever. It was the hardest thing to hear, but it made the biggest difference and probably very much is the reason I'm here today. But what was going through my head was, wow, like, first of all, people are going to find out and they're going to start asking what's going on. I don't work, right? Like,
Yeah.
stuff is not happening. I can't talk. I can't eat. I can't drink. They're going to know something. And I don't want to be a fraudster or a fake or a liar who's going around saying, I'm fine.
Yeah, everything's fine. Just don't mind the food coming out of my nose. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
Yeah, right?
Exactly. I have had a long history of imposter syndrome and not wanting to be like a fraud or a fake. And so that was the first thing in my mind actually was like, well, if I just start, you're telling me I should not talk about it, or what are you saying? What are you saying here? And he basically said, no, like if someone asks, you just tell them what the doctor said, but you don't own it. You don't say that this is my future. And you don't say, you don't predict any outcomes except for I am being healed. And you start talking like it. And then he challenged me to find every resource I could, every verse, every scripture, every training, anything out there on healing, and just start speaking it out loud to myself and to my body, and start like not paying attention to what I saw, but paying attention to what I knew to be true. And at first, that was extremely hard. And in addition to being afraid that people would think I was a fraud, I thought people would think I was totally crazy, going around with brain tumor saying I'm healed. And then I, kicked back like, but what about all these other people? As we do by collecting evidence of every time it hasn't worked for someone else. Our brains are super helpful that way. I looked around and I said, but what about our friend, Dave? He had cancer and he really believed in healing and he died anyway. What about my best friend's mom and, her grandma and her dad? And, her dad had cancer and they died anyway. And what about this? And what about this? And they believed in healing and it didn't work for them. So who am I to say it should work for me? And he said, their stories are not your stories. You know what they said they believed, but you don't know what was in their heart. You also don't know like how their life was supposed to go. But all that you can control is your own thoughts and beliefs and what you do about it. That's all you have control over. And you can only, if you focus on why it won't work for you, that's what's going to happen. But you have the chance to rewrite your story, to be the author of your own story. And that was not as easy as it might sound.
Well, if I can jump in real quick, I was going to ask, had that ever occurred to you? Because I can only imagine how disempowered you must have felt, not knowing what was going on. And this was even years before you got any kind of clarity. But had it occurred to you that, oh, I can change my results, or at least how I feel, by changing how I think and what I believe in?
No, that was so back in 2013, and I had never done any sort of coaching. I didn't know who Tony Robbins was yet. Like none of the people who slowly entered my world later and also changed it had come in yet. This was my very first experience on like changing your life through the power of belief. But the really cool thing was everything that I already knew through scripture and through faith that I then finally chose to actually apply instead of just talk about, like it worked. And now when I read things in books, or I read things in like something from Louise Hay or on You Can Heal Your Life, or I read, in Think and Grow Rich, or I read different things, and all that it does is resonate with me because I already did that. Like I was granted access to that same source, even without those inputs. And it just like, it was a process. It was I wanted to just curl up and lick my wounds. especially when my body didn't do what it should. And at first, I I took actions, I took the steps to do what I was challenged to do, which was speak out in faith despite evidence to the contrary. But in reality, um, I still didn't believe it, and I was still doing it for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
I was doing it to try to control my future.
Really?
And
No, that's a huge distinction, because I imagine lots of people listening or watching or both, and they're thinking about, can I do that now to control an outcome, to dictate a certain outcome, to like stranglehold something I want in my life or business?
yes.
Like, and that was, how did you navigate that?
Well, I was a bit of a control freak. I'm sure you can't imagine that.
Would never tell that. And
No.
no, I mean, you would be surprised. I think every single person I've ever had on the show and Relentless Growth is a control freak.
I think some part of that serves us, but at some
Yeah.
point it stops serving us. And we have to realize that like quantum leaps come as a result of massive action and then massive surrender. And that was what happened.
Ooh, can you say that again?
Yes. That is what I learned during this brain tumor, was that quantum leaps happen as a result of massive action and then massive surrender.
Wow.
And at first I just tried the action, and that's okay, because sometimes you just have to put one foot in front of the other. It doesn't matter if your motivations are wrong. Still doing it is better than not. But you will start to get frustrated, and you'll start to be like, why isn't this happening? It's still not turning out. Like, I'm still in pain. My head still hurts. This is still happening. Why isn't it doing what I wanted to do? And I was frustrated, and I wanted to give up on all of life's normal activities. I wanted to stop working out, stop doing yoga, stop riding my horse, stop caring about life, stop working for a moment. It lasted like 2 days, and then I reconsidered. But I I wanted to stop doing everything because they didn't have the results that I had previously had. Like, before you work out, you get muscles. It's great. Now I would work out, it would hurt. I wouldn't gain any of the muscular like response back. And I'd be like, well, screw this. I'm
Yeah.
going to sit on a couch and eat Cheetos
Sure.
until I die.
Yeah.
And that is how it's going to happen. But then it started to dawn on me as I leaned more into like, all right, God, I've done everything I know how to do. I've done like, I'm standing on faith. It's still not happening. I just surrender. And there was like this moment when I realized that I wasn't actually afraid of dying. I wasn't that afraid of letting go of my life. I was afraid of continuing to live with a lower quality of life. I was afraid of living my once active life in a wheelchair or on a feeding tube or any number of things. And it just sank in that the reason I was afraid of that, because there's always a deeper why, was because I was afraid of losing my happiness or of not being able to have joy. I was always a very bubbly, joyful person. And I thought that that was dependent on certainty and on my circumstances. But then as I leaned into this, I realized that in those moments of pain, I could still choose joy. And I could choose to work out and do yoga simply because today I could still move. And who knows about tomorrow? But because I could still move today, I was going to move today. If I can, I will. And that started to shift. And I started to realize, like, I'm not afraid of death. I'm actually just afraid of losing joy. But if I can choose it at any time, I have nothing left to fear. And
wow. I'm imagining somebody sitting, listening to this going, holy shit, I needed to hear that so bad today. You know, somebody's at the end of their ropes. You know, the business is crumbling, the marriage is crumbling, the best friend just walked out on them, whatever is happening, they just lost a loved one. And it feels like they're in that dark spot that you were just talking about, that hopelessness. And for you to choose to say, I can choose joy today, essentially because tomorrow is not promised. Did you have like a practice that you implemented in that moment, or a certain thought that you reached for in that moment to get to that?
Well, I'll say it in kind of the rough way that I used to do it, because this was, again, like before I learned any of the coaching terms, this was early on. Now I know them all, but back then,
This was the street speak for it.
this was street speak. Back then, the way that I would lean into choosing joy was, one, doing something just because, again, like doing a yoga class or going for a walk just because my body still moved and I was grateful for that and being grateful while I did it. So I would, do the yoga class, and instead of thinking, I hope I lose weight, I hope my biceps are bigger when I'm done, I would just be thinking, wow, I managed to breathe the whole time and my head is only pounding halfway. And I'm so grateful that today I got to do that. So it was doing the thing anyway, having gratitude while I did it. And then it was in moments where it felt impossible, I would go into my head. Like, one I remember distinctly, I don't know why this one sticks out, but my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, we were dating during this, and you should have him on your podcast and ask about what that was like.
Yeah, that's a different perspective, right?
Different breakthrough. But we were, a friend and I wanted to take him to Chicago to watch the Cubs because it's his favorite baseball team. And so she helped me plan it. And we were like riding the train to the city. And it was a sunny day. It was gorgeous. It was his birthday. I had friends there. I was like, everything about this should be wonderful. But my head was throbbing and my body was aching, and like all of the physical symptoms of the tumor were bugging me. And I felt just totally emotionless on the inside, like an observer, like, wow, I'm watching this beautiful day, these fun people, this baseball game that's about to happen. It should be happy, but it's not. I can't seem to get past the pain to enjoy it. And in that moment, I just kind of shut my eyes on the train and pictured this altar in the forest. I don't know why. That was the first time I did this, but now it's always there for me. And I just pictured this like altar in the woods, and I just walked up to it and laid down on it and said, I surrender. The outcome I want this second is for me to be enjoying this moment and laughing and pain-free, but that's not the case. And even if that doesn't happen, I'm here for it. And I just kind of mentally created this picture of letting go. And when I did that, all of the joy came back. And sure, it was still mixed with some of the pain, but it was like, I'm not in control of the outcome. And I'm just going to love the moment I have. And so that really became kind of a practice for me. Anytime it felt like I was doing the things and the outcomes weren't happening, I would go to that altar and once again, just surrender control of the outcome. And then trust that it was working together for my highest good, and go back to doing the steps. And I know we've gotten kind of a long way away from that, 2.5 years down the road in the surgeon's office.
But I appreciate this though, because I again, part of having you on is to share the story and share what worked, because clearly it worked. And if it's possible for you, someone else can break through that way as well.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And I was excited when you sent me the title of your podcast that it was about breakthroughs, because when I was kind of thinking about this morning as I was getting ready, like, what does his audience need to hear from me? And I could just talk about business success, but you will have many guests who will do that. Yeah. And I'm happy to do that too. But where it started was this massive breakthrough in like not just having faith, but in actually acting on it. Okay. So the real breakthrough came when I realized that it's not enough to believe something. You have to actually do something about what you believe. Like, it matters that you believe it, but until you actually do something about it, nothing happens. And that's what happened with the brain tumor. Like, prior to it, my whole life, I believed in God, believed in healing, believed in faith. And I didn't know about the power of the mind and any of those things yet, but I believed that was possible. But the second it happened to me, fear took over, and it was probably almost as bad as the tumor itself. Really? In trying to kill me. Like, I started to notice maybe 2 or 3 months in that the symptoms would be bad, and then I would start panicking about them, and they would almost double on the spot. I would go from could barely breathe to actually passed out on the floor. Like
Wow.
it would close my throat the rest of the way. It would shut down the rest of the functions and it would knock me out.
No kidding.
And it also kept me from having like momentum towards healing, because every time I'm saying the words, I will be healed. My body is well. Whatever I would say. Like, there is no brain tumor anymore. There is no spoon, and this is the Matrix.
I get that reference. Yes. For anybody who doesn't get that, just Google the Matrix. There is no spoon.
And I would be saying all the things, but it actually running through my mind while the words were coming out of my mouth was this hamster wheel of fear saying, you're going to die, 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 like spinning. And I couldn't seem to turn it off. And I like finally thought, well, you know what? I don't for sure yet know if I can do something about the tumor, but I'm pretty sure I have control over doing something about the fear. So I'm going to tackle that first. And
And real quick, this was before all the coaching kicked in. This was, you were like, I just see this as fear. That's fascinating to me, because most people get into that story and they don't see it as fear. They see it as, this is the reality I'm in, right? This is just how life is now. And you're like, no, there's something in between me and this situation, and it looks like fear.
Well, it's interesting that you point that out. I've never really thought about why I had that awareness, but there was a situation that made it blisteringly obvious that something else was turning the dial up on the symptoms. And I'm just going to count each one of those situations as a blessing, because it it helped get me to the end result, which was
the way, right? Yeah.
Happy and healthy, and with something to share for other people. So if you don't mind, I'll share that one too, because that might be just the thing. So, I probably 6 months in had my first checkup MRI. And before this MRI, which it was with a different surgeon, they just like cycled me to another one each 6 months.
I'm smiling. I'm actually furious, but my wife experienced this. She had a thyroid issue, and we went through several doctors, and I just got so frustrated because we couldn't get any clear answers. And every answer was the same recycled answer that had not changed. When we started doing research, the answer had not changed in 75 years, despite all the advances in technology. And so I can only imagine, what you were going through, like bouncing from place to place and not getting clarity. And we're smiling about it now, but I can only imagine how infuriating it was at the time. Yeah.
It was days and nights, like sobbing my way home from the doctor's office.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I do laugh about it, not because it wasn't important, but because I can again be the observer and see it from the outside and see that it was really working for my good and what was happening under the surface. And that is worth smiling about. So probably, I think what maybe brought that fear awareness was that about 6 months in, I had my first like follow up with a different surgeon. And in that first 6 months, I had been doing everything my friend challenged me to do, standing on verses. I would play Psalms while I slept. I would like play sermons about healing, anything I could find. Faith was my background. So that was really all that I knew. There was no coaching, no Joe Dispenza, no like anybody to tap into yet. So I did what I could. And my symptoms in that first 6 months were actually getting better and better and better. Like probably by month 3, I could swallow again. I could speak normally. I still maybe had some muscle atrophy, but it was pretty crazy. Like it started coming back. And the doctors have specifically said, even if you have the surgery, much of this won't come back because it's nerve damage and it's permanent. And so
you were starting to reverse what he.
I was starting to reverse the symptoms that they said would be permanent, even if we got surgery. Wow. And so I'm like, oh, yes, like this is a sign, it's working. I'm getting healed. This is happening. And then we went to that first, 6 months MRI, and they do a scan, and I'm so just full of confidence. And this is going to show that it's either smaller or gone, because obviously I'm getting better.
Working. Yeah.
And it's working. Well, the doctor comes out and he says, well, based on this, I know we did it on a different machine because it's a different hospital. So I can't tell for sure, but it's either the same or it's bigger. And in fact, here's the next like 5 symptoms you can expect. You're going to have numbness on your face. You're going to have blindness start in your right eye. You're going to have this, and call me when that happens. And like,
Call me when that happens. What?
and then we'll do something. Like, he was
What?
just probably trying to just be helpful and prepare me for the worst. But in this instance, that was not helpful at all. And I walked into that appointment like partially healed, full of faith that this is happening, and left just in tears,
Oh, yeah.
totally shattered. I went to bed that night. Well, sobbed my way home, went to bed that night, woke up the next morning with all of my symptoms back, plus some of the new ones that he had just mentioned. And that is when it hit me that there is no physical way for that to be the case so quickly. Something else had to be playing in. And it was like the only difference between today and yesterday is the fear that I just took on by taking the doctor's word as the last word.
Wow. I mean, that as a case study and what your mind can, we've all heard.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Like trying to communicate that to somebody, who's experiencing something, and you're like, no, if you just change how you think about it, it'll get better. Like, yeah, bullshit. That sounds great.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
You don't understand what I'm going through right now. And you're like, yeah, but hang on, hear this story and hear it right now. So what happened next?
So part of me knew that had to be physically impossible, that there was something like that fear had a connection here. So I jumped back on to just doing the things again. Like, this worked before, I'm going to heal myself again. And I'm just going to like start going at it. But then is when I decided that I had to tackle the fear first before the healing could come through all the way.
Yeah.
Like, for some people, it may not matter, but for me, it was clearly a barrier. And I didn't know how to fix the physical, but I knew I could do something about the fear. I tried just saying, I'm not afraid, which that works brilliantly.
Yeah, I was going to say, trying to sell yourself on that. Yeah.
No. So instead, I realized I couldn't like just kick the fear out, but I could drown it out. I could drown out the voice of you're going to die with positive inputs, with good inputs. And when I didn't have enough faith, I could borrow someone else's. So that's when I went into full mode. And by the way, I now apply this to my business on the regular. Like, I just go into brain tumor mode and go, I'm going to put in all the inputs of someone else who believes that this is possible.
Well, how do you do that real quick? How do you do that in business? Like, what does that like practically look like?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's health or business. So if you feel like there is somewhere you want to get to and you're not there, and some part of you is still afraid or doesn't believe it's possible, then you need to change that belief. And if you're not able to do it on your own, which most of us aren't, it's very hard. Sometimes you just have to borrow someone else's evidence, someone else's faith, or someone else's belief. And sometimes you're the forerunner and there's nothing to borrow. So buckle up. It's going to get exciting. Yeah. But in most cases, you can just start changing the influence and the inputs that go into your mind. So it starts with like turning off Netflix and turning off the news, and instead watching Rewired on Gaia, and instead reading Think and Grow Rich, and instead like putting 10 good money mindset books on your phone on Audible and let it autoplay every time you get in your car, and like doing a meditation in the morning. And it starts with shutting the gates to outside evidence that it doesn't work, which sounds like an ostrich burying their head in the sand. But
well,
occasionally,
I don't think it does though,
because cut it off.
Yeah, because it's like you said, you're drowning it out. You're not buffering it away. You're not. Most people would go to Netflix to ignore all of those feelings and all those thoughts that are dragging them down into fear. And that would be burying your head in the sand. But yeah, here, I don't think that's what you're doing.
So instead you're literally choosing what goes into your mind, because you begin to realize that what goes into your mind is what comes out on the other side. And that's what changes your life. A couple of really great resources that I know now, I wish they were around then, but we got through. John Acuff, one of my favorite authors, he has a book called Soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
And it is all about like turning down the volume on fear and replacing the thoughts that run in your mind with intentional ones. And sometimes people will revolt on that idea. They're like, that's brainwashing. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And
it is. Right. And you're
I
doing it
want
to
it.
yourself constantly.
Yes.
So now what? Yeah. Yeah.
I give myself permission.
You're right. To brainwash myself into a better life and business. Yes.
Yes,
That's fair.
exactly.
No, I mean,
So,
you brought that up, but so many people, especially on the Relentless Growth episodes, have talked about that book being a real eye opener to them as to what their inner monologue, that soundtrack that's on repeat in their head, is actually like, because they live in it, they swim in it, so they don't see it all the time. They don't know how to look up and go, oh wow, that's what I'm telling myself every day. Yeah.
And we resist the urge to do something as silly as it says in the book, which is like a 1-page new anthem that you read to yourself every morning. We're like, that's so repetitive and dull. And I don't want to just think the same 10 positive thoughts on repeat on purpose. That's dumb and boring. But in reality, I forget the actual percentage, but our brains think like it's high, like 87% of our thoughts are repeats throughout the day, at least. Like we're just running the same dialogues, the same thoughts over and over. Another great resource that I know of now is You Are the Placebo with Joe Dispenza. It's a thick book, but if you listen to it on Audible, it's a little bit easier to get through.
He's got several though. Like if you're into what Johanna's talking about, pick up several of his books, or look at them on Audible, and pick the one that fits where you are, because I think his stuff can get kind of heady, and it can get kind of
yeah, for sure,
almost textbook like sometimes. Yeah. So but he's a doctor, so you gotta give him that.
For sure. I almost like probably the only reason I could make it through was I started with You Are the Placebo. And when I started reading it, the examples of the patients that he shared about were just mirroring what had happened in my life.
Wow.
What happened at that doctor's appointment when I was getting healed. Then they said I wasn't. I believed them, and it all went away, which is basically what that whole book is about. It's like the power of your mind. And I was reading it, and it was just affirming what had happened to me. And I was like, oh yeah, I did that. Yep. I was that dumb.
Oh yeah, that does work. I tried that once. Yep. That's fascinating.
Totally, heal the brain tumor. Moving on.
Let me ask you this: to somebody who would be skeptical that this is not the approach for them, what they're dealing with is actually physical, is actually at the cellular level, is actually something beyond their thinking. What would you say to them, given your experience?
I would say that a brain tumor is very physical.
I love that. Okay. That's, because I think, for instance,
MRIs.
Yeah.
Could see it.
Here's the thing.
I could see the symptoms. I could see the muscles. Oh, this necklace is hiding it. But like so I'll do an awkward thing here, but this muscle behind my collarbone used to look like an ice cream scoop had scooped it out. It was completely atrophied.
Wow.
And that was one of the things that the doctor said, now it's nerve damage. Now it's permanent. It's never coming back. And it's bigger than ever. Like that, and my traps, and like my left side is now my strong side instead of my weak side. And so, yeah, I would say that's an excuse.
It's a very convenient excuse to hide back. That sounds so shitty when I say it out loud, because somebody's like, how dare you act like you know more than this person who has this diagnosis? No, that's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is to be open to the idea, because people like Joe Dispenza and Johanna have proven that this is at least one alternative that works for some people. May not be the key to everybody's lock. Don't get me wrong. And it works for them. So why is it not an option to at least give it a shot for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so while you're doing disclaimers, I'll throw one in. I have nothing against doctors, and I think they do amazing things. I have a lot of friends that are doctors. And as you can hear from my story, I clearly pursued that path hard.
Right. Right.
And, but the funny thing was, there was a lot of points in that story where I felt like it wasn't the right thing for me. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to be pursuing that. But then I had friends and family who were scared for me. And anytime I said, I'm done going to the doctors, like, we're going to deal with this a different way, they were afraid I was giving up. They were afraid
Yeah.
I didn't care. They were afraid I was throwing in the towel. And
Yeah.
so I kept going longer than I wanted to because of them, actually,
Oh, really?
because of them being afraid that me not going to the doctor meant I was, giving up on life.
Hmm.
And I wish I had listened to my intuition sooner and saved a few tens of thousands of dollars on medical bills.
Right.
Um, but even that was miraculously covered. And that's the other thing is there is always a moment when you can pivot. Like we are so afraid of taking action sometimes because it feels like, what if we make the wrong choice and then we mess it up forever? But we get so many chances to try things and pivot. That's life. And clearly, like I tried the surgeon path and that door got slammed so hard in my face. And so clearly I was meant to walk this other journey, which became
Hmm.
a massive breakthrough, which transformed into business breakthroughs and transformed into the life I have now. But I'm not being punished because I went to the doctor, even though I was
Hmm.
maybe not meant to receive healing that way. And for the longest time, I thought I would be. I felt so much guilt. Like I either need to be all in on the miracle faith camp or I need to just go all in on the doctor surgery. And like,
Yeah.
here I am walking the middle. And
Yeah.
and that's kind of when I realized again that what I said earlier, like what you believe matters, but what you do about what you believe matters even more. So if you feel like the way that your body is supposed to recover is through surgery or through a doctor, do it, but be all in on it and support yourself in that and affirm yourself that this is going to result in my healing. Like still speak out the words, believe it. If you go to the surgeon and you're like, oh, this will never work either,
Hmm.
it's probably going to come right back. Maybe it will. You can
Yeah. It,
you
it,
can
it
mess it
almost,
up just as well.
that's what's so fascinating to me is it's like it bounces off of our stubbornness. Carl Jung said, what you resist persists. And I cannot disprove that in any way, shape, or form. I have clients who push on the same things, like I'll make something up so nobody gets their feelings hurt, but let's say procrastination. Let's say this person procrastinates, effectively every single day, and it causes problems, and they know it's a problem, and they know they should stop, and they know this, and yet they resist resolving it, or they at least resist letting go of that habit. This Superman glass is cracking me up. I love the little cape. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. So yeah, it's almost like a shield that all kinds of empowering alternatives and healing modalities can just bounce off of our stubbornness, saying, no, it has to be healed this way,
Yeah.
or I have to succeed this way. And I mean, for everybody listening, like I have not, and I'm sure Johanna is the same. I'm sure we both deal with this all the time because it's just a function of being human, especially people in business. We can be stubborn as hell and we can want it our way, and we can want to run headfirst through a brick wall just because we want to say we did it that way. And it's not always the most effective. And it seems like you found this balance between, I love how you use the visual of the altar and the forest, the surrender, and also the persistence of, I'm going to still take action. I'm going to take a lot of action.
Mhm.
And the result is going to happen somewhere in between those two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. I think you summed it up pretty well. And so you started this question with asking about how I started my business and two others at the nearly the same time. So we've kind of told the brain tumor story. The skip to the end is I am totally, completely healed, functioning at 100%. No doctors included, other than to be my catalyst for leaning into like not taking the doctor's word as the last word. And you can translate that Don't take a supervisor's word as the last word if they tell you you're never going to amount to someone who deserves a promotion. Don't take a potential client's word as the last word if you pitch a 6-figure brand package and they tell you,
Yeah.
that's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take a potential collaborator's word as the last word if you say, hey, I love talking to people about branding and how it can help them show their value and charge what they're worth in any market. And they say, "Meh, like branding, everyone talks about that. It's not for me." Like, never stop at no.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe sometimes stop it. No.
Okay. There
In
was the
business,
whole
never
me.
stop it. No.
Business, never stop at no.
This is where the bourbon kicks in and somebody goes, wait, shut them up, or we're going to have to edit this really hard. But I hear what you're saying, which is basically like, know the difference between your no and someone else's no, or your limitations, which you have none, and someone else's perceived limitations. Is that a fair way to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And went with this straight again. And your own perceived limitations.
Yeah.
We will keep ourselves in a box way longer than anyone else will, for the most part. Like, what was I even afraid of? What did I have to lose that kept me playing small, working at this little teeny agency for 3 years, doing practically minimum wage,
Mm-hmm.
working second shift, like doing crummy bottom of the barrel work? All that it was my own perceptions of all the scary things that were out there if I actually rose up to the challenge of what I was made for. And yeah, like that's where you asked about. And then I accidentally sidetracked into the
No,
health.
you did great, because I'm with you. One thing that came up for me was you said, what was I so afraid of? And I thought of a friend and a coach that I had. His name's Jake Kaufman, if you want to look him up. He said, people are not afraid of their fears. It's not the fear that is really the scary thing. It's what the fear would confirm if it did happen. And it took me a while to really put that together. I had it on my board for like 3 months because I was like, I know there's brilliance in here, but I'm not really, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And then I saw it playing out with coaching clients in all kinds of situations, and in my own life in all kinds of situations. It wasn't like, let's pick on failure. It wasn't that the person is like mortally afraid of failing. It's what would be confirmed if they failed. So in
That
other
I'm a
words,
failure.
exactly, that I am worthless, that I am not as good as I think I am, that I do suck at my job and I just am pretending, or what, I'm an imposter or whatever.
Yeah.
So for you, do you think there was something that this would have confirmed, and that's what you were afraid of? And what was
Oh,
it?
heck yes. Like now, years later, before I just thought it was fear that the market's flooded or fear that I won't be able to get a different job, which was crap. None of that was really the case. The real fear was that it will be confirmed that I'm not actually as good as I think I am at design. What if I'm actually not great at building a brand? What if I'm not actually, what if I have nothing original to say and nothing new to share? And I am actually just a like knockoff. What if
Wow.
that?
You know,
And
talk about soundtracks. Like, listen to how cruel
yeah,
that soundtrack is. Yeah.
yeah. But it was there. But then when the brain tumor diagnosis came, within 2 weeks, I looked around at that crummy little office and said, I have nothing to lose. I have absolutely everything to gain. And if this is going to be a battle, I need something to focus on besides just the tumor. I need to believe that there is another Johanna on the other side of this, and she is a badass. She is successful. She has done, maybe she's failed a lot, but at least she has tried, and she has done something with all of the gifts that she was given. And so that is when I quit my job. I walked out the door. I literally started walking down the street and knocking on business doors. And if someone was in the office, I popped my head and said, hey, I'm Johanna. I design stuff. Do you need stuff designed?
No kidding. You just walked in and said that?
I Mary Kay ladied my way down the street.
I think that should be on your website, from cold calling and door knocking to six-figure branding in a couple of years, despite a brain tumor.
Like, it is amazing what can happen in your life when you suddenly realize you have nothing left to lose
do you
and
think?
everything to gain.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, cut me off.
I did mean to. I absolutely meant to. I have a friend named Rob Murgatroyd, and he's a blast to follow on social media. If you guys look him up, his name's Rob Murgatroyd, and they live in Italy. They inspire people to move to Italy. And part of the reason that they decided to move there from California was we had this conversation, and I had asked Rob 100 coaching questions if I asked him one, but one that I asked him really hit him like between the eyes. And he was torn between, do I stay in California where I love it, or do I move to Florence, Italy, where I also love it? And I said, if you only had 2 years left to live and you knew it, not just like, we could die at any moment, but you knew you had 2 years left on the earth, where would you go? And boom, he said, Italy. No, not even a hair of a doubt in my mind. Is that an expression? I don't think that's an expression.
It's okay.
We'll blame that on Heigold.
It's close enough.
So he moves to Italy, and for the past, I want to say 2.5 years now, they've lived there, and he is on fire. I mean, he squeezes more out of life than just about anybody I know. And to think that fear might have held him back, without that question, it's mind blowing. So I guess what I'm really serving up here is the question: was this a gift in a way? And did it really shape who you are now into this abundant, grateful person? Or could you have gotten there without the brain tumor?
That's a really amazing question. And I'm not going to say I couldn't have, because I am limitless in my potential. But I can't really look back and see the path to which I did without the brain tumor. In fact, I ran into a woman the other day who worked at the agency that I worked at that was going downhill. Like, people were getting fired all the time. It was going under, and we knew it, but we were all just like too scared to leave and figured we'd ride the sinking ship, I guess. And I ran into her the other day, and she stayed there as long as she could. And then when it closed, she went to another small agency, also very local. And to the best of my knowledge, is still working for like 20 to 25 bucks an hour.
Wow.
At this tiny agency that's also now almost going under. And she's just like, makes just enough money to do one fun thing that she likes every few weeks. And other than that, she just lives at home with her cats and like knits, literally.
Wow,
She's
really?
my age and she's into knitting.
No kidding.
And I don't disparage anyone that's into knitting. If that is your passion, do it. But for her, like, she stayed in the mindset that I was in at that time, which is, I'll take what I can get. I'm lucky to have this. I'm not that amazing. Who am I to be special? Maybe a bit of laziness or procrastination on someday I'll try. And so two of us in the same spot. Like, I look back and sometimes I question my success and my leaps. And I think maybe everyone in the world is making the same leaps, and life is just moving at a faster pace now. And I'm not actually that different. But then I look back at that, and literally that could be me.
What's
that
saying? Sure, contrast creates clarity. When you have that sense of contrast between where you could have been, where you could have ended up, and the path that this set you on, that gives you a tremendous amount of clarity of like, are you really being you? And I think you've proven over and over your answer is yes, I wouldn't settle for less. But for a lot of people listening, that's exactly what they're doing, is settling for less right now. Yeah. Sorry, I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I got lost somewhere in the story. Well, let's see. I Mary Kay ladied my way out of the office. I started Design by Joe with a whopping 8 hours of freelance work on my clock. So I thought that's enough evidence for me. This is a thing. This is a business. People need me.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. I've got 8 hours. That's enough. Let's go.
Let's file that business LLC. Let's get the lawyers. Let's get this done. I'm dying. I don't have time.
Yeah. I mean, that really lights a fire under you, right?
It does. And so, Design by Joe started there. And that because you teased it at the beginning, I have to answer the other 2 businesses that I started at the same time. One of them was actually a yoga apparel boutique. I sold yoga pants made out of recycled water bottles. And I started that because of the kind of health things that were happening at that time. I found this really cool pair of pants online that actually said, I will on the leg, which hit me right when that revelation was hitting. And I used to get them out every day and just lay them on my bed. And if I didn't feel like working out, I didn't feel like moving, I didn't feel like getting off the couch, I would look at those pants and be like, as long as I can, I will. And so it started to spin in my mind, like, if this silly little pair of pants can encourage me this much, what could it do for someone else? So I contacted the designer, asked if they'd like to be sold in the US. They were from Switzerland or something like that. They said, absolutely. And just like that, I decided that's enough to start a business. And I started Uniquely Yoga, which if you look it up, has since been shut down. And we're going to circle back to that because sometimes failure is part of success. And sometimes you have to stop doing things in order to do something else more, which was a very hard lesson for me to learn. And it took me until last year, honestly, to give that one up because I was so emotionally attached to that business. But now I finally closed down the website. It has come to its resting place. And the third business that we started that year was called Iconic Moto. And it was custom cafe racer motorcycles and apparel.
There's something, Jess and I didn't talk about this. Jess Burns, a client of mine, was on Bourbon and Breakthroughs. And we're not sure if her episode's coming out before or after yours, but listeners, Jess Burns is who I'm talking about. She used to race mini motorcycles. And there's something about women in business and motorcycles. I'm not sure what it is. It's the adrenaline junkie in you, I guess, that just has to get out there and go fast and break things. It's
maybe.
Yeah.
But actually the motorcycles came first. So I think it's just the inner badass that then rises to the occasion of checking out life and saying, what else can I rock?
Totally fair. So I'm sorry, Iconic Moto. What happened with that one?
That one also got shut down actually within the first year because we learned some hard lessons about not knowing our audience. We were building cafe racer motorcycles with, there was 3 of us that started that business together, and cafe racers were becoming really popular in Europe and even in California, but we were in Michigan where the weather does not cooperate. And the people that do care about cafe racers in the Midwest want to build it themselves. They don't want to buy it. That's kind of the cool thing. So it was a really great lesson learned in doing more research on
the opportunity, is there a market? Yeah.
Yes. Or at least your location in relation to those things.
Yeah.
I think if you have some cool idea, there's probably always a market, but are you in it? And we weren't willing to move. And so that was just an experiment that got shut down within the first year.
But, I love that there was no attachment to that one. It was just like, okay, this, the words on the Iconic Moto stuff don't mean anything to me like the yoga pants. I'm going to hold on to the yoga pants as long as I can, because that means something. But what good lessons there too. Fail forward and be willing to experiment, be open to feedback. I mean, it's all like the classic entrepreneurial lessons are all right there in all 3 businesses, because one of them survived.
It thrived.
It thrived. Yes.
Yes. So that is Designed by Joe. And that is what I do now every day with great joy. Which is I, started by Mary Kay lading my way out the door down the street and saying, hey, I design stuff. And then I fell into the first entrepreneurial trap because it was, I was a baby entrepreneur, fell into the trap of becoming a commodity and just doing what I saw around me and charging what everybody else charged and letting my clients tell me what they thought they needed
Mm.
or what they thought they wanted, even though a lot of times they'd be like, I don't know what I need. But I didn't want to be the expert because I did not want to be responsible for the outcomes.
Mm. Well, you had 8 hours of experience at that point. So no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But no, look, I mean, full circle moment, that fear crept back in, right? And was train wrecking your results.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I let it be like I let Design by Joe grow organically during the brain tumor years. It was enough to pay some of the bills, but also I was dealing with all of this health stuff. And let me tell you, that will be like a full-time job. When you decide to drown out the fear and get serious about changing your body through the way you think, that takes time and effort. But and I was battling, it was an uphill battle for Design by Joe because I would have people who knew about the brain tumor because I was in the newspapers and like my story was featured. The college I was at did stuff and there was fundraisers and all of these things and it was known. And so people would think about hiring me and then they would actually ask me, how's your head? Like
No kidding. Really?
basically, are you going to die in the middle of this project that we contract you for?
Wow. Really? I have never interviewed anybody who had that happen to them. So
Had
how
somebody
did,
die on a project?
no, 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 who had somebody challenge them by saying, like, basically, are you going to stick around and finish my project? Like, I'm so callous that I'm like, hey, before I hand you this check, are you just going to up and die on me? Or I've never heard anybody say that. How did you deal with that?
It was a very unique challenge. And mostly I would just assure them that I was feeling great. I actually set up records and spreadsheets and ways for there to be refunds if something did happen for their peace of mind. But I also sometimes just said, you know what? This isn't a fit. Like,
Yeah.
that's what you're afraid of? This isn't going to work out. And fired
That's great.
clients early.
That's great. So can we fast forward real quick to
Mhm.
going from just poking your head in the door and being like, "Hey, y'all need some branding help," to having the courage to fire. I was going to say having the balls to fire the clients, but it's a little more PC to say having the courage to fire clients when I'm sure it would have been nice to pay off the medical bills and nice to take the check and be like, I can put up with somebody for a little while. This rings for me because I'm like, I don't know how many agents in real estate I've trained who will not fire a bad client. And I'm like, guys, bad clients don't just miraculously turn into good clients. Like they don't just, wake up one day and be like, I've been treating you kind of like crap. I'm sorry for that. I'm going to have a whole new worldview moving forward and follow your advice inherently every time. So you had the courage to just, fire them straight up. And then you got to a point, it seems like quickly, where you were like, no, this is worth 6 figures. And the brands that I want to work with take that commitment that seriously and are willing to invest in them. How did you develop, like, what was that leap
How did
to?
that happen?
Yeah. What was that transition like?
Well, the firing and saying no happened early on in Design by Joe because I had already learned the lesson about wasting my time on work that wasn't aligned and life is too short. Like I did not come this far and start this business to only come this far. And so I am going to be working on the sky's the limit or nothing, which is a sometimes painful, sometimes scary, sometimes downright terrifying stance to take. But I started to realize the risk of playing small, that it could be forever. And you start to be seen as that small player forever. But that did not totally absolve me from the typical, business trips and falls, because after the brain tumor was over, healed, done, it's been like 3 years. I looked around at Design by Joe. So let's say 2013 diagnosed, end of 2013. So we're in 17. I looked around at Design by Joe and I can, no longer have to spend my energy focusing on my body. And I looked at my business and I went, huh, I kind of worked myself out of one dead end job into another that I'm the boss. I'm not that great of a boss. Like, I work myself all the time. I don't pay that well. What did I do? This is not what I set out to do. And I went from mediocre in one way to coasting in another. And so when that realization hit, I grabbed my husband at that point. We had just been married like 6 months or a year, and said, hey, you know that Tony Robbins guy? You've been talking about him forever, like ever since I met you. And I don't know really anything about him, but you seem to really want to go. Let's stop talking and start doing. We're going. So we went to an Unleash the Power Within conference in California, I think. And
this was in 2017.
Okay. And I went because I felt this like grip of again. I felt the same kind of momentum building that had started with the brain tumor. Where it was like I did this massive push, this massive launch, this quantum leap in my health and my faith, but I only got this high in business, and I did not come this far to only come this far. And I know there's a heck of a lot more left in my potential, but I don't know how to get there, and I'm stuck, and I'm feeling unmotivated, and I'm scared that I'm going to slip back into feeling okay with being mediocre again. I need some help. And so just based on what I had heard him say about Tony Robbins, we went to this Unleash the Power Within conference, and that conference once again changed my life. Like, we walked on hot coals the first night, and that was the least transformational part of the entire weekend.
That's a great way. I've been and I've done the firewalk, and that's a great, I've never heard anybody describe it that way. And that's perfect because that's just like, oh yeah, that's just a capstone. That's just like the real shit happened all in my head and my heart, but that was cool too. Yeah.
Yeah. At that conference, he had us do an exercise where we, practice looking into the future and asking ourselves, picturing like our great life, which I know you've done this exercise if you've been there, and then taking it all away. And how do you feel if 10 years from now, you're in the same place? And to me, that felt worse than death. To not grow in 10 years, to not reach what I knew I could, to not tell my story to people who needed it. Because at that point, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't going on podcasts. I was completely invisible because I was still scared of all the things from before, of like fraud, imposter. She doesn't have a clean MRI to back up her story, by the way.
Oh, wow. That's what you were telling yourself? Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I went to this conference and we did that exercise and I wept, and something within me just changed. And it was like, this is not about me anymore. This is about the people that I'm meant to serve. And am I doing it in the way that I could, or am I holding back because I'm afraid of something foolish about my own like reputation, which who gives a shit?
But it all just came, like, it just connected, like, in Tetris, when you get like the straight bar and it all connects and like the whole thing I'm like, that's it. You moved from craving certainty and needing like this security and this predictability in your life and your business to full tilt contribution. Right. I mean, and we're speaking Tony Robbins language, but
that's okay. He's a master. Let's speak it.
Well, 6 fundamental human needs. It's not something I necessarily came up with, but this idea for everybody not tracking with us, everybody has a certain set of needs. 2 of them are certainty and uncertainty. We need a certain amount of certainty in our life. I need to know that gravity still is a thing when I wake up tomorrow, right? Because how disorienting would that be if that wasn't certain? We also need a certain amount of uncertainty or variety, because we cannot do the same things every day. If you've seen the Truman Show, when he, everybody's doing the same exact thing every day. He's like, something's off here. So everybody has a different balance that they require, but the happiest people find a way to get rid of the need for too much certainty or too much variety, and they find fulfillment in contribution. and they say exactly what you just said. This is not about me anymore. This is about something bigger, a purpose, a mission. So what was it all about then?
So he asked the question later in that conference. Pose the challenge of fall in love with your clients instead of with your products or services. And then you will grow like you need to grow, expand like you need to expand, pivot when you need to pivot. And I went to that conference as just, a commodity of a graphic designer, charging the same as everyone else, feeling like I was made for more, but not showing it in any way. And I came home this little fireball that 6 months later, people were still physically pulling me aside at meetings and conferences and events. They're like, "You're different. Why are you different? Why are you still so excited? I thought this would go away."
That's cool. Well, that's
And
why you're here though, because this is like you own it now, right?
Yeah. So what happened was I came home and I looked at my business and I went, you know what? This is not at all representative of who I really am and what I can really do. I have been like the cobbler where the children wear no shoes. You heard that saying,
Yeah.
cobbler's children wear no shoes.
Mhm.
Where I was like trying to do design and branding for clients. Although in those early days, it was really more just graphic design. And I waited for them to tell me what their business needed. And when I came home, I started asking them. I took his advice. I sat down and I said, "What do you need more of? What do you want more of in a relationship with your designer? What would make this better?" And they said, "We don't know what we don't know."
Mm.
And we want to we want an expert who knows our audience, who knows our competition, who knows the industry, who knows the trends. And we can just say, "Hey, we want to do a marketing piece this month on this event that we're doing." And that's all they need to say. And I'll say, "Awesome. Like, we've built your brand. Here's what we're going to talk about. Here's who we're going to promote it to. Here's what's going to go on it. And it's going to be badass."
And they're like, "Thank you. We just needed somebody who was that certain." That's the paradox, right? Is to get to that level.
Certain.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what people actually wanted to buy.
They wanted to buy the knowledge and the expertise. And I had been so afraid to stand up for that because what if I pronounced something and then I was wrong? That's a silly fear.
I'm smiling because I know how many people, if they're still hanging with us here and they're still listening, I know how many people are stuck right there right now and they're fighting tooth and nail to hold on to that limitation. So
yeah. So I looked around at my business, and when they told me those things, I said, "Okay, what can I do?" They need an expert, and I'm happy to be that now. I am ready to show up for myself, for my clients, and step into my expanded potential. So how can I be that? So I went and I took coding courses because they had been saying like, "Cool, you gave us a great brand, but we went and tried to find web designers and they totally botched it and they don't care about this and they don't understand design, and like just because someone's a web developer does not automatically mean they get your brand and all this stuff." So I went to coding. And the first thing I learned was that I don't actually like to code. But
I was like, I can't imagine anything more antithetical to your personality than data and numbers and sitting there writing out code and testing it. And
but
it's cool though that you did, because you were like, this is what needs to happen, right?
And so now I speak the language. And so now I can work with a client and we can do the brand project and I can design the whole website like based on the story they need to tell, and then work with one of my developers. And anytime that developer says that's not possible, I can say, "Yeah, it is."
Every entrepreneur listening is going, "Yeah, all right. Don't stop it. No."
I know this is possible because I can do it. So
funny.
Try this, do this, and then we create magic. And I went the other way and I leaned into messaging and into story and into the why behind a brand. Because at first, when I was early days, I was just having people come to me and say, "We need a logo. we like dogs and we like purple. Make us something cool.
Is that all you need?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. But in those early days, I did not trust my own intuition. I did not trust my skill as a designer. I did not trust my knowledge of brand to stand up to them and say, based on your industry, your business, and your audience, none of this aligns. Like, this is just your personal preference, which is not the most important thing when it comes to how you show up in the world. In fact, your personal preferences are pretty low on what matters when it comes to appealing to your ideal client. It's more about what they like and about what your authentic self is, because that will attract them. But you don't always like your authentic self. So you're telling me you like this, and that's not what we need to share.
And it
So
seems like a
now if
lot
I
of
do
people,
that,
sorry, I was just going to interject real quick. It seems like a lot of people have a hard time being aware of that because they're so busy, doing their thing that they don't, kind of like your zone of genius is what you do so naturally that you don't think that's useful or valuable to anybody, right? So you help step in and see that and reflect it back to them and then build from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a much more in-depth process, which I don't want to bore your audience with on this call because I feel like they've hung in with us really well. And I want to get to kind of the second breakthrough that they might also love, but it really came from that foundation of health. And so to kind of encapsulate that story, it's that I added in things that had more value to my clients, and then I became the expert that they were looking for because it was who I already was, but I was afraid to claim. And I decided to own it. And when I did that, at first, it didn't make that much of a difference in my pricing because I had more to offer and I had more information, but I didn't look like it. And if they looked at my website or they looked at one of my business cards, I just looked like every other designer who was out there saying, look at my work. Don't look at my website. It's a little embarrassing. Like, just look at the
cobbler's shoes and all that. Yeah.
Cobbler's shoes. Yeah. And I kept doing that. And then I sat down and I went, hold on a second. This is not working. I added all this more value, but now I'm having to spend all of this time over explaining why it's worth it. And people aren't getting it. But what I do best is show and tell. What I do best is show you like what is possible. Why am I not treating myself like my own client? So I took 3 months. I closed the books. I did not take any clients. Wow. And I put myself on the schedule, which is hard and scary. And you will be tempted to not do this, but you should.
I want to go back. You closed your business for 3 months.
3 months. I took no clients.
Okay.
I put myself as my client, and I took myself through the entire branding process that works magic for my clients. I wrote my messaging. I got to my why. I figured out what problem I solve better than anyone and who I solve it for. I figured out who my Cartier clients are instead of my Target clients and what I can do to speak directly to them. And then I positioned my brand in the most literal way possible into the world of luxury. I created these epic business cards that had, suede touch and foil and deboss and gold edges. And then I did a photo shoot, called my photographer, dipped it in gold, had these custom nails with diamonds. And
so that's real. That's not an effect.
Real.
Oh, no.
That's
so
real.
I wondered, for everybody listening, when you go to the website, which you can scroll down in the show notes and you can tap on our website. And when you see that, you're going to be like, is that a graphic? And so that's a real paint dripping off the business card. Okay. That's really cool. Okay.
It's real. And everything about that is real and it's very intentional. I asked myself for each thing in that image, if this was me, what would it be? Like if I was a bracelet, what would I be? And I decided my brand would be Hermes because it's classic, it's timeless, but it's edgy and it's luxury. It's something that is not available for everyone. It is delightfully expensive. And the shopkeeper is pleased to tell you that they are sold out of the $30,000 Birkin bag and you may not buy it today. Thank you very much.
So I have to ask, if you got to that point with your brand, let's do that as if you were a cocktail. And we'll
Okay.
come back. We'll come back to wrap up your story, but we're right there. We might as well do it now. I've asked everybody else on the show, if you were a cocktail, how would you be broken out into parts? Like one part this, two parts this, one part this.
So I would be broken out into one full shot of joy, one shot of limitless potential, and a solid shake of unstoppable.
Okay. It's always fascinating. You know, I think language reveals so much more than we give it credit for. Joy, limitless potential, and unstoppable. You know, the parts, yes.
I might have forgot the garnish of badass.
Okay.
Let's not leave that off.
It's funny that the aesthetically oriented people always think about the garnish.
It would be badass.
My wife is very aesthetically oriented, and when I do any kind of fancy garnish on her glass, I hung the moon if I do that. So garnish.
So
of
keep doing
badass.
it. Easy brownie points.
That's right. Easy. Garnish of badass, shake of unstoppable, one part limitless potential, and one part joy. Okay. So let's do this. Let's wrap up your story, and then I have two more questions after that. But I don't want to discount or cut you off before you get to what I think you were kind of building up to the whole time there. Yeah.
I will try to speed up the train here. And
no, you're
anyone
good.
listening, feel free to play this on 1.2 speed.
Yeah.
I will sound a little like a chipmunk, but you will get to the end faster. So I did this, and I took it from being something I just had to explain with words why it was worth it, to actually showing it on a page, like through my images, through my brand, through what I position my brand next to, Hermes and Louis Vuitton and Louboutin, and all of those already known things that trigger the thought of luxury in the mind of the consumer. That is brand positioning. And I love talking about that for another time, just the power of that for a personal brand. What do you put yourself next to? How do you show up in the world? But what I did was I realized at the Tony Robbins conference, like I finally knew my value. But then I came home and I realized it wasn't enough for me to know it. That just made me frustrated. I knew it. Nobody else knew it. Therefore, I'm underpaid and frustrated.
Ah.
But I had to also show my value. And so that's why I took those 3 months. I, redid my messaging to talk directly to my ideal client. I redid my website. I got intentional. I made those photos. I created the content, and I'm very much about that, like no templates, all about custom content, because in a world of AI and templates and boxes, like you were not made to be like everyone else. If that's your goal, why even start branding yourself? If your goal is just to look like everyone else, we failed before we began. And I am not here for that.
No, I find that so refreshing that you said that. This morning I found there was an article that Canva now has some AI tools. And I just thought about how many people will be in a good way, leveraging AI in their branding and in their marketing. Of course, I knew we were going to talk about this today. But I also thought, wow, what a slippery slope to just strip the identity, the personality, the color of somebody's life and story, to just take it all out and dump it into a pre-made box. And how boring. How boring.
And how quickly it snowballs.
Yeah.
Into that Instagram filter where every person's face looks exactly like the other one. Like that app that 25 people look identical now.
Yeah.
That is where content and
sorry.
Yeah. Nope. Go ahead. I love your takeaways. Please keep taking away.
I got excited, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's good.
But I was just thinking, I was like, what a cool thing though, that we might be on the cusp of, I don't want to say a revolution, but at least a time where people go, you know what? This is not real. This is not authentic. This is not me. And they crave and claw for someone who can help them go, yes, that's me on the page. You pulled the personality out of me and put it into a photo. When you look at your website, that's what it looks like you do to me. And I think that really driven entrepreneurs, they're out there to not just sell stuff, they're out there to make a difference and tell their story. So I think, let me ask you, is that part of how you connect with these people who are willing to invest at this level, is to say,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Larry Wingett says, capture your uniqueness and use it in the service of others. That is what I want to do. Harness your uniqueness, show it to the world. And part of it happened overnight. Like after that first 3 months, it was immediate payday, immediate payoff. I went from charging $5,000 for a brand to I did this sleep, I relaunched myself. And the next day I was in a coffee shop. I was working on my computer. Some guy came over, asked to borrow a power cable, which is random and weird, but that's just the way the universe works. I said, yes, no problem. Let him borrow it. He brought it back, asked me what I did. I gave him my card and he like oohed and awed over it, ran back to his table, came back 5 minutes later and said, I Googled you immediately because your card was epic. And then I saw your site and I saw the same card and I saw all of the branding behind it and the reason and the why and the luxury. And I just know that you get branding, you get luxury, and I need you to do work for me. And by the way, I work for Google.
no kidding.
It was the next freaking day, which like it doesn't always happen.
What is this witchcraft, Johanna? What is this witchcraft? And well, you know what it really says to me, and this is just the coach in me, I can't turn it off, but you're in total alignment, right? You're in total alignment. There's no friction between your message and your embodiment of it. There's no friction between, who you want to be and who you are now. And I think that's what calls in those opportunities that fast. It's just total alignment. So I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. We're going to get through this. I'll stop. I'll mute myself if I have to.
Don't do that. I love your takeaways. They make this so much better. It's so good. But I think you're right. It was alignment and it was the confidence showing on the outside also. Like, because I now knew who I was and knew that how I showed up in the world was fully representative. It visually validated the high value that I brought to the market. I walked into that cafe 10 feet tall. Yeah. Like, of course they came up to me because I radiated the confidence of knowing that what I had to give to the world was on full display, easily visible, no more over explaining why I did it, why it was worth it. Like that was done. I could just do what I came here to do. And so that confidence, like over the years, then I've started to see that in my clients become one of my favorite transformation that happens. Like not only do they get this badass brand that then helps them double their prices. Sometimes for one of my clients, it helped them double their annual revenue in the first month that we launched the new site. Wow. Like their whole last year revenue twice first month. And not only does that happen, but also they walk out just a totally different person. They walk out as the person they thought they would be in maybe 10 years right now.
That's cool.
And it's so much fun. And that energy attracts those opportunities as well. Like it's just a double-edged sort of awesomeness. And it didn't happen. Let me sum it up to say it didn't happen completely overnight. So the connections did actually happen overnight for me. But the pricing didn't go straight to six figures. I went from 5,000 to, wow, I'm going to double that because I know that is not enough for what I am offering. And then I did a $10,000 project and my client loved it so much and couldn't stop gushing about it. And it added so much value, but I worked so hard and I was like, wow, I am still not charging enough for what I'm doing. And then I doubled it. And the next client that showed up for that price was even more aligned with what I wanted to do, with where their business was going, with what was possible. And was like, you know that saying, the people that pay attention? That is actually true.
100%.
And suddenly they were taking what I was giving them and doing more things. And I was like, this is so badass. And then next one, 50K, let's do it. And that client.
And people were still showing up and people were still excited and the ROI was still there.
Yep. And it, like, the more I raised it to match, and it was to match who I knew I was supposed to be. And who I knew I was supposed to serve. That pricing is not right for everybody. And some people will make their business 7 figures and 8 figures by selling a low ticket item. And that is what they want to do, who they want to serve. And that is perfect. Like, this is just how I was meant to do it.
Yeah.
I love working with less people and doing more. And I started asking myself, how can I deliver the kind of epic, life-altering brand packages that I am dreaming of, where we take them and not only do we build the brand around their business, but we take that person and put them in their favorite place in the world. Maybe it's Italy. Maybe it's south of France. Maybe it's Greece. Like, we transport them to that place and create this epic week-long experience where we do their photo shoot and maybe we just do some adventures for fun, because we are getting to the core of what lights them on fire. And then we capture them in that element, and that is what we brand.
Ooh, that's cool. So you strip away all the here's how I should look and the stiff, corporate look, and put them in their zone, not just zone of genius, but zone of comfort. That's so cool. Okay.
Yeah. And so then I started asking myself, well, how can I do this? Well, it's got to cost more. Otherwise, I can't bring in the best videographers and the best photographers and the private chefs and the helicopters and the private cars and the fun stuff that I want to offer. You can't do that for 10K. It doesn't happen. And so instead of saying, I wonder if I could do something that was worth a little bit more, I just said, yeah, like, this is what I was made for. This is what's coming. Who's signing up for this? And the crazy thing about pricing is that, like, you can charge any price and someone will still think you're too expensive and someone will still think you're too cheap. Like, I have back in the early days, lost out on a project for $500 because it wasn't approved by the board. And for being too expensive, $500.
The 500 was too expensive.
Too expensive.
Okay.
Back in the day, long time ago. But still, it's like, it's also some of the energy you bring it with, but the people you're working with. Like, this was a very small thing, and they probably were comfortable getting something on Fiverr.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they were expecting, but
yeah, they wanted a full brand for $25. Yeah.
Yes. Probably.
Yeah.
So I have missed out on that. Thank God. But also, I have gotten a no on a project that was $300,000 because I was too cheap.
No kidding.
Yep. And to that tier of client, like, not only is quality equal quality, but price equals quality. And they were concerned that because I didn't charge enough, I was not at their level. And so pricing is subjective, and it is simply about walking with confidence in what you do in front of who you know you're meant to serve. End of story.
I don't
probably
even
not
have
end of story. There's probably more.
No, I was gonna say I don't even have a question there because it's so true. One of my favorite books is The Prosperous Coach by Rich Litvin and Steve Chandler, and in it they say your price is your screen for your ideal client. And
that's so good.
Between what you just said about courage and, yes, you have to represent that value. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you got to bring it, but it's also being in front of the right person who sees that value. What my coach is, his heritage is Native American. And so we talk a lot about fair trade. Is it a good trade? Would you make that trade? And I use this all the time because I'm like, that's the heart of value. Like, why is one person willing to pay $500,000 for a Ferrari and another person thinks a Kia that can transport, 4 times as many people is too expensive at $60,000? Like, is it a fair trade? That's really the only question we're asking when we're in the marketplace. So yeah, I really like how you said that, because it's about being in front of the right client who's aligned with what you're proposing as your value and your price.
And
Well,
there are people in business who are on fire. They are ready to level up their, like, how they show up in the world at the speed of light. And I'm here for them. I am here to do what I did for myself all those years ago, but what I wish there had been someone there to do for me, which was help me step into my limitless potential.
mm,
Help me tap into that, and maybe even believe in me before I believed in myself, which I love doing that for my clients. They joke that I'm their professional hype woman. Like, as soon as I meet them, if they are the right ones, I see what they're capable of. And that is what we are going to show to the world, not just what they're doing today, but what they're capable of that they don't even know yet. That is what we're going to show. And it just, like, then I feel excited and alive. And that contribution that you talked about, like, I get to help people unlock without a brain tumor. Thank goodness. They
yeah.
don't have to have one.
I'm still laughing about somebody having the audacity to ask you, "Are you going to die on me?" Well, let's do this. We have to, unfortunately, we have to wrap up because I have to go. But here's the thing. We're going to have you back on, because we can talk about business. We didn't even talk about business that much.
A little bit.
I know. I mean, yeah, for sure. But there's so much more, like, because of, well, we'll save it for the episode. If you were a cocktail,
I would love to.
If you were a cocktail, we know you would be 1 part joy, 1 part limitless potential, a shake of unstoppable, and a garnish of badass. What would that cocktail be called? What would it be named?
I'm torn. I'm really torn between, it would just be the unstoppable cocktail, or would it be just the badass? Like, I think you may have to help me out with that one.
Oh, it's 100%
As far
the
as,
unstoppable.
okay.
I mean, look at your story. There, no matter what, you leaned in and said, "No, we're not stopping there." Right?
We're not going out like this.
Yeah,
Hell
yeah.
no.
I think, yeah. I wrote down, if you really got stuck, I was like, "I'll bail you out with a couple."
Ooh, let's hear it. What were you going to say?
She's probably had 2 drinks by now. It's only fair to.
I don't know. I've got
I wrote
2
down. I wrote down the cobbler's shoes, and I wrote down bold faithful.
Like Old Faithful,
like Old
but
Faithful,
bold faithful. I like that.
And then I wrote down risky business, but I struck through that because I was like, nah, that's not really.
Tom Cruise did there.
Yeah. I was like, that's
Been
more
there,
Tom Cruise. Nobody needs Tom Cruise in his underwear in their mind thinking about your cocktail.
No. But
So,
if you need it to be, more unique, I'm fine with Bold Faithful. That is super fun.
But the unstoppable, no, I mean, this is like everybody gets to name their own cocktail for sure. And it's so representative of your story, and your business, because you don't want people to stop at their current limitations. You're drawing them out of their limitations constantly as well. It's perfect. It fits.
Okay.
So let's
say
somebody either sampled it and they're like, the episode, and they're like, yeah, I need to know more. I need to talk with her. I need to meet with her. I need to see these business cards. Right. Or they hung in the whole time and they're like, hanging on every word. And they're like, I need to meet her. I need to work with her, or at least need to follow her online. Where do they go? How do they connect with you? What's the best way for them to get started?
Excellent question. If they are just mildly interested, they're like, she was cool, but I don't know yet. They can follow me on Facebook or Instagram. It's at Design by Joe Studio. If they're ready to chat with me and tell me their story and how much they loved this episode and how much they love you, they can visit designbyjoestudio.com and just contact me. Or if they're looking for help tapping into their limitless potential and finally showing up as good as they are, instead of just hiding behind same, then they can book a consult. And I also put together a resource just for this audience that I will share more of later. But because I knew we may run out of time about the business side of things, I put together a video training series called Branding for High Dollar Sales. So now that you've heard all about the brain tumor, if you want to get a bit more about what we were talking about and how to do this for yourself, you can visit designbyjoestudio.com/free training. And there's no dashes in there or anything. It's just, /free training. And that will let you into a 4-part video series that talks more about how that process works, how I went from charging $5,000 to 6 figures and multiple 6 figures, and how you can start to do some of that on your own as well. So that is also available.
Awesome. Thank you for that gift for everybody. We will put a link in the show notes to all 3, your social media handle, your website, and the free video series. Did you say Branding for High Dollar Sales is what it's called?
That's the name of the training.
Okay.
The backlink will just be designbyjoestudio.com/free training.
And I also want to plant
And
this
I'll
seed
shoot that to you.
for several people who are, they're in business and they're going, okay, one day I'm going to hire her, right? Like let's just acknowledge that not everybody's there right now and they aspire to be. That's totally cool. I don't know if you're a big vision board person, but every year
I'm a huge vision board person.
Are you? Okay. I was like,
I love it.
almost every person I know who's been to like UPW or does personal growth work has some version of a vision board. I've done the physical ones and they always end up like literally mine's in my closet. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me. I need something I see consistently. So it's on like my background on my desktop or on my phone. But for some of you, this is something to talk with Johanna about now, because it's inevitable. Once you start on this track, especially if you're built like us, you're unstoppable. So I'd encourage you to reach out and at least start the conversation. Thank you so much for the time today. I think if we had another bourbon, this show would have turned south real fast. Like 2 hours and 3 bourbons might have been real interesting.
We'll save that for next time.
Yeah. I'm like, somebody's gonna do it at some point. Somebody's gonna like, drink a half a bottle in one episode, and we're gonna see them show their ass or something. And I'm like, I don't know who it's gonna be. It's not up to me. It's up to the bourbon gods, not me. Johanna, thank you so much. Anything
You're so welcome.
Anything on your heart that you want to share with people before we wrap up?
Yeah, just that you might hear this and you might use it for encouragement, or you might hear it and you might think, what am I doing? Why am I not there? How have I had this? Like, I've been stuck in this place for so long, or if I've had this health issue for so long, and you might use it to shame yourself. This is not about that. It is just a window to the world that it is possible. And I want you to look at it that way. And then if you feel stuck or trapped, get help. Like, since that time, I did so much of that on my own. I wished I'd had help. But since then, I've been very blessed to work with lots of coaches and even hypnotherapists and with strategists and with like so many people that then helped my business take even more leaps. And I have realized that it's not weakness to get help in areas where we struggle. And so don't look at like, well, she didn't know anything and she somehow just did it. That's evidence that you should do the same. If I had known, if I had the resources, I would have tapped into them. So it's like, it is not a sign of weakness to hire a coach. I love them now. I'm married to one. Chris is one. His wife is pretty badass. I would love to meet her. She is like a force of nature.
She is 100% a force of nature and then some. Sometimes it's like riding a tornado. I'm like, where are we going? What's happening? Why are we on to this next?
So take a page out of my newly written book, which is Shortcut Your Way to Success. Don't take as long as I did. Just ask for help where you need it. And there are so many resources now available for this, which I'm really excited. Like, I wish they'd been there then. I'm glad they're here now.
Right.
Tap into them. That is all. That is what I want to say.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you found some value in the show, which I know you did, let's be honest, you did, right? There's so many things that I have pages of notes here. One of my favorite things was you said that, and I don't remember who you said the quote is from, but your uniqueness. Can you tell me that again? Your uniqueness in the service of others.
Yeah. Larry Wingett. Capture your uniqueness. And I can't remember if he says just use it in the service of others, but that's the heart of it. It's like you were made in particular for something amazing. And when you take the time to sit with yourself or sit with someone like me who does content mining and draws it out of you, then you can use what you were given to like make massive impact in the world, the impact that you were made to make. Like there's nothing sadder to me when someone has a vision, a dream, a story, or something to share and it sits on a desktop for 10 years and goes silent. And then it'll probably still get out in the world. If it was meant to be told, someone else will share it. Someone else will have the experience, but it could have been you.
Right. And captured your uniqueness. That's such a great part. So yeah, capture your uniqueness in the service of others. So many other gold nuggets. So what I'm asking you to do is share it with somebody who needs to hear it today, a friend who, would find it valuable. And don't forget to, easy for me to say after all this bourbon, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode. You never miss a great guest. You never miss gaffes like that where we've had some bourbon. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Johanna, thank you for the time. And we'll catch all of you on the next episode of Bourbon and Breakthroughs. Cheers, Johanna.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. This has been awesome.
Till next time, right?
Yes.